I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend. He got me pregnant and I had an abortion. They got back together and got married. Back in 1997, I was 38, my daughter just 18, and I've been struggling with addiction for years. I can hardly remember a time I wasn't escaping through alcohol or cocaine, numbing myself from responsibilities and regrets. My daughter, meanwhile, was just coming into her own, trying to find a stable footing as I failed to provide her one. I wasn't abusive, but I was absent in ways that hurt just as much. For a mother, that's a hard truth to face, even 14 years sober. Then there was Harry. He was my daughter's boyfriend at the time, 24, and despite the years between us, he had a wild, magnetic charm that captivated her. He reminded me of the young men I'd chased in my own reckless youth. But beyond his good looks and smooth talk, there was a familiar darkness, the same kind of brokenness I knew all too well. He was charming but self-destructive, a reflection of the person I was struggling not to be. My daughter had been dating him for a year, and even though I knew she was attached, I'd silently wished they'd break up. She deserved better than someone like Harry, better than someone like me. But I never had the courage to tell her that. Instead, I watched them spiral, caught in cycles of partying, drinking, and arguments, until one day she told me they'd broken up for good. It was a relief. I thought she'd be free from the chaos he brought. She moved out soon after, tired of the mess her life had become, including me. I don't blame her. I was hardly a mother back then, more like a ghost, lost in my own addictions and regrets. A few weeks later, Harry started calling. It was strange at first, but he was persistent, asking if I wanted to go out for drinks. I resisted the first few times, wary of what his motives might be, but there was a part of me that felt flattered, that felt desired. Eventually, he said he had some pain he was willing to share, and that's all it took. My judgment, already fragile, shattered completely. That night, he came over. We did the cocaine, and our inhibitions dissolved. I remember feeling alive, like I hadn't felt in years. For those few hours, I forgot about the shame, the pain, the life I'd failed to build. And when we ended up in bed, I pushed all guilt to the back of my mind. It was only afterward, in the quiet darkness, that I felt the full weight of what I'd done. This was my daughter's ex-boyfriend, and I had betrayed her in the worst way. The affair continued for a few months. We were each other's escape, two broken people drowning together. Harry was a mess, and so was I, and in our twisted connection, we found a temporary refuge. But every time I saw him, the guilt grew stronger. I started drinking even more heavily, hoping to numb the shame, but it only made it worse. Each encounter felt like I was digging myself deeper into a pit of darkness, and I couldn't find a way out. Then, I found out I was pregnant. I hadn't been with anyone else, so there was no doubt it was Harry's. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was too old, too broken to raise another child, especially one born out of betrayal. The decision to terminate the pregnancy wasn't easy, but it felt like the only choice. I couldn't face the life I'd be bringing that child into. I went through with the abortion in silence, never telling Harry or anyone else. It was a secret I intended to keep forever. After that, I stopped seeing Harry. The affair had been a dark chapter, one I desperately wanted to close. I even managed to stay sober for a few months, haunted by the memory of what I'd done. But sobriety was fragile, easily shattered by my own self-loathing, and I soon found myself falling back into old habits. The darkness I carried felt heavier than ever. Then, 2 years later, my daughter called me. She'd reconnected with Harry, she told me, and he had turned his life around. He was sober now, working a steady job, and wanted to make things right with her. Hearing her voice, filled with hope, made me feel physically ill. I imagined Harry confessing our affair, revealing everything, and the thought sent me spiraling. I wondered if I'd lose her for good this time. When we finally saw each other, Harry pulled me aside, quietly assuring me he would never tell her about what happened. I could see in his eyes that he, too, was haunted by what we'd done. We'd both moved on, or at least pretended to. That there was an understanding between us now, a shared weight, a shared guilt. For the first time, I felt a sense of release, knowing he wouldn't shatter my daughter's happiness by unveiling our past. 16 years later, my daughter and Harry are married, living in Texas, with a son of their own, my grandson. Seeing them together, watching my daughter laugh and love her family, is a bittersweet joy. Every visit is tinged with the knowledge of what I did, the guilt that still lingers like a shadow. My grandson, sweet and innocent, represents the life I could have brought into this world, but chose not to. I'll never forget that choice, or the life that might have been. Seeing him sometimes makes me wonder, if I had kept the baby, would things have turned out differently? Or would I have simply dragged another soul down into my darkness? Harry had his own share of struggles. He battled cancer a few years back, and I'll never forget the phone call where my daughter told me, her voice trembling with fear. My initial reaction was a strange mix of pity and guilt. He beat the cancer, but I often wonder if his body, like mine, still bears the scars of the life we lived together. The addiction, the betrayal, the secrets, they've etched themselves into our bones. The memory of those nights, of what we were, feels like a shadow we both carry. Even as we've built lives that look nothing like the chaos we left behind. Sobriety has given me clarity, but also forced me to confront the pain I caused. I've rebuilt my life, but there's no escaping the legacy of that one terrible choice. I try to be the best grandmother I can, to support my daughter in ways I failed her when she was young. But there's always a part of me that feels unworthy of her forgiveness, of her love. Each visit to Texas is a reminder of what I've kept from her. And sometimes I wonder if silence was the right choice. Would she be happier knowing the truth, free from the weight of my secrets? Or would it shatter the foundation of trust we've carefully rebuilt? When I look at my grandson, I feel a strange blend of love and sorrow. His existence is a testament to the life my daughter has created, the love she shares with Harry. But he's also a reminder of the son I could have had, of the path I turned away from. I'm thankful for his innocence, for the pure joy he brings my daughter, untainted by the darkness of the past. In a way, he represents a second chance, a chance to do right by my family, even as I bear the burden of my past mistakes. Years have passed, but the shame lingers. Harry and I remain bound by our secret, a silent acknowledgement every time we meet. Sobriety has been a gift, but it has also been a curse, forcing me to face the person I was, to accept the choices I made. I'll carry this secret to my grave, knowing it's a burden I'll never fully release. My daughter deserves her happiness, her family, untainted by my failures. And so, I keep silent, bearing the weight of my remorse alone, hoping that somehow, in some small way, I can make amends by staying the course, by being the mother and grandmother they deserve. In the end, I've come to realize that some sins can never be undone. Some secrets are meant to be carried, hidden beneath the surface, a reminder of the person I'll never let myself become again.